Hey, Tommy Joe, great to see you this morning, sir.
Good to see you guys. Race day. Hope you guys are as
Yeah.
ready as I am.
Oh, it doesn't matter if we're ready. It only matters if you're ready, and you
That's
look
right.
like you're ready.
Very ready. Very ready to go. I've been ready to go since we announced this thing on Thursday. I've been ready to go for it.
Yeah, forget game day. It's race day. We're
It's
excited,
race day.
Tommy Joe. It's awesome, and the Martins Motorsports. We're excited about everything that's going on, and I can't tell you how pleased I am that everybody else jumped on board on loving this idea to be a part of the race team with you guys, because this was something that was brought up to me a couple weeks ago out of nowhere, and a really good close friend up here in Minnesota who said, "Hey, look, I'm going to be doing this deal where I'm sponsoring Tommy Joe Martins," and he immediately sold me on this whole thing. He goes, "Hey, you have any interest in being a part of this thing?" And I said, "Absolutely." So we're really happy to be with you, man. I mean, this is really, really exciting for us. Jon and I don't pretend that we are NASCAR guys, down. I will tell you, I have a really tight tie, however. So the NASCAR Hall of Fame was designed by somebody from the University of Minnesota, where I went to school and played football up there. So a wonderful lady from New York, but she was born and bred Minnesotan, and then went to Harvard, and then she designed the NASCAR Hall of Fame there in Charlotte. So it's beautiful, and I've actually had a chance to be there. So that's about as close to NASCAR as I have, though.
What about you, Jon? Any previous NASCAR kind of connections there?
Well, I've watched an awful lot of NASCAR, but none in person, other than not true NASCAR, but state fair,
Yeah.
ovals and things like that. And I've seen those for years. But I just thought that it was so cool because I was lucky enough, Tommy Joe, to see Formula One cars up close over in Monte Carlo and Monaco for that Grand Prix over there.
I'm very jealous of you right now.
Oh my God. And Pete, you can't believe how loud and how crazy that is, because they're literally on the streets.
Yeah.
And, they put up these big nets and everything else, steel nets, but they put up these huge support things to keep the cars on the track. But my God, that is a cool thing to see, Tommy Joe. You would love that.
That's on the bucket list.
Yeah.
Stuff. See, the problem is, guys, when it comes to the Monaco Grand Prix and going and seeing all this other motorsports in the rest of the world, it's also in the middle of our season. So I've got a race too. So it's tough for me to go from Charlotte, North Carolina to Monaco.
Oh yeah.
In 12 hours to get over there and do it. But I can say on behalf of our entire team and really the entire sport, our sport kind of revolves around relationships. And, Pete, you kind of talked about kind of the relationship that you had that kind of brought you into this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really special for me as a driver and also as a small team in our sport to welcome a new sponsor to the sport. So I just want to say thank you to you guys for giving us the opportunity to represent a market rebellion in something that's kind of a new adventure for you guys. And I hope you feel like you're getting a lot out of it.
Oh, we are. We already are. We're excited about it. I think the entire team is all in. By the way, Jon, I don't know if you know this about the Tommy Joe tie-in to us, but where'd you go to college, Tommy? Tell Jon where you went to school.
I went to Ole Miss. I've been a rebel my whole life.
He's been a rebel.
It's been a rebel my whole life.
Yeah, we gotta love rebels.
That's right.
So we got the rebels thing. Hey, Tommy, I'd love you to tell us a little bit. Now, we all know football. Jon and I both played football, college football, professional football, the rest of that, right? So we understand game day as good as anybody. But tell us about race day. What is your day from the time you wake up all the way up to race time? Kind of give us sort of the highlights of each hour or thereabouts.
Sure. This is an interesting day for us and really an interesting time for NASCAR because of COVID-19. And our schedule for race day has changed quite a bit. Where normally on a race day, guys, we would have a qualifying session where we try to run the fastest lap that we can. And that's what determines your position in the starting lineup. So that would be the normal thing that we would do. And that would kind of be earlier in the morning. So on a normal race day, I would already be out there at the racetrack and we would probably be cutting a lap right now. But because of this, that's all gotten pushed back quite a bit. And now that's a random draw. So we're starting 32nd today, which obviously that's not ideal, but that was just a random draw. So we just got to make the best of it. And because it's a night race, the way I look at this, and I've talked to my dad about it, my dad played minor league baseball. So this is kind of the same kind of game day prep ritual stuff. If it's a night race, I'm always kind of early in the morning, wake up before 8 o'clock, even when I don't want to, kind of guy. But I make myself sleep late on a night race. I just feel like you're going to be a little more refreshed if I can do that. So I did that today, went and got some breakfast, kind of a late breakfast, met with the team, met with one of the owners. And so now it's going to be a little bit of kind of a calm period. NASCAR actually wants us, the drivers, coming in there about 3 or 4 hours before the race. They kind of want to segregate us because they're trying to keep us, I guess, away from the garages for the most part. Normally I would kind of be in there doing whatever it is, an autograph signing, something like that. But now they want to keep us kind of isolated a little bit from the rest of the teams. So it's a little bit of a different vibe, guys, than it normally would be. And so I'm just trying to kind of stay relaxed. I've watched the other races from the last few years. That's like a film study session for us and kind of strategy that we look into. And then I'll have a meeting with our crew chief. We'll probably do that on a video conference and kind of talk about strategy for the race. And then about an hour before the race, I start to do kind of stretch, kind of listen to some music, kind of start getting a little bit hyped up. And then when it's race time, like I really try to make myself do this, guys, where like you guys know, you guys played sports. There's a shelf life to this for all of us of being able to play and being able to compete at a high level. And for me, like I've realized that now. I'm 33 and I've been doing this now for a little while. I try to make myself right before the race just kind of look around and really try to enjoy the moment a little bit. And then when I climb down in the car, it's like, okay, that's enough. Like it's all business at that point.
Well, Tommy, I think a lot of folks like that quote that I put out from Cale Yarborough to you, saying it's like driving a NASCAR is like dancing with a chainsaw. Because, I mean, you know, we're used to now having those cameras everywhere, you know, the GoPros and all the rest in the car with you, looking forward, looking at you, looking behind you, you know, all that different stuff. And when you're seeing the guy, you know, they've got that, is it Hans?
Yeah, Hans device, yeah.
Hans device around their neck, Pete, and they're sitting there locked into that seat damn near, but still the arms on the wheel, when that thing's going into the corners and so forth, and you know, the straightaway is way over 200 miles an hour. When you guys are hitting that curve and then holding that car into that with all of the other, you know, the air effects that are going on from all the cars around you. I mean, it's got to be a lot like being a fighter pilot, right?
I think that's probably the best comparison to it. I think really when you think about kind of the environment that we're in, it's a high pressure, high stress environment for a long time. I mean, we're going to be doing upwards of 2 Gs in every corner that we go through. And you're going to be doing that for 200 laps and you're going to be doing it with other people around you. And your environment is constantly changing. The handling of the car is constantly changing. The track is changing. Like to a person that's kind of new to the sport, you're going to look at it and be like, well, the track's the same every time. It's like, yeah, but also the lines that we're running around the track are creating rubber being laid down on the track. So the grip level is going to be changing throughout the course of the run. And so there's a lot of that stuff going on. That's kind of the strategy element that maybe a lot of people aren't seeing. They're just seeing cars going around. Like when you're able to listen in on the radio, and I would really encourage both of you guys and all the fans and anybody that's interested in watching this race tonight, you can download the NASCAR app. You can listen to the team communications for free during the event. And that gives you just like a little bit of a taste of everything that's going on. It's not just driving the car. I'm also having to give them feedback and tell them what's going on so we can make adjustments to make it faster, the whole race.
Well, Tommy Joe, I got this for you now. So you said you got the draw of 32. You weren't happy about it. My number in college was 32 as a middle.
Oh, man.
So again, things are working, man. They're working
out.
So I got a question for you. When you were at Ole Miss, by chance, was Eli Manning there? I'm just trying to piece it. He's a little bit older, or was he there when you were there?
A little bit older than me. I came in kind of right at the tail end. So my first year at Ole Miss was 2005. So I think he graduated 03.
Okay.
I think. So
Yeah.
he was just like a few years before me. But I know when I came in, Ed Orgeron was the coach at Ole Miss.
All time.
And love Ed Orgeron, and he was the worst coach in the history of Ole Miss. and he has said since then, because he went on to coach at USC, and he went on to coach. There was another team as well where he was an assistant coach, and he said that actually being terrible at Ole Miss taught him a lot about being a head coach. And then obviously you see kind of where they're at now. So like, Ole Miss was early on the Ed Orgeron trade. We were just a little too early.
So,
Yeah, well,
oh, go ahead, Jon.
I was going to say, I think all of us love his passion, but he also, it seems like, became a better players coach.
Oh yeah.
As it went along, because a lot of them, especially a real tough talking guy like
Yeah.
Orgeron, you know, when he's like that, I think that especially early in a coach's career, he thinks he needs to be that tough.
Right.
And Ed obviously is tough, but he thinks he needs to be hard on the players and tough on them. And I think players, you get more out of them if they think you're tough, but then they also feel that you're on their side. And I think he was really able to translate that in the last few years since he's been at LSU.
That's literally the quote that I heard from him. He said, I needed to be tough on my players, but what I didn't do a good job at Ole Miss is like letting them know that I love them too. He said, I was just tough on them all the time, and it just didn't go over very well. And so I think that, but now I can sit here also as an Ole Miss fan and say that that's one of the best recruiters I've ever seen in my entire life, because he turned around. He got fired 2 years into it, and then we won the Cotton Bowl for the next like 2 years right after that. So with his players coming in, we had probably the best run that we've had. So yeah, the guy, nothing but love for Ed Orgeron.
It is funny that people don't realize it's like, what players did you inherit from your previous staff? And that kind of shows you a little bit, you know, the runway. And I go back to my Buccaneers, where they were built by Tony Dungy, but they won the Super Bowl afterwards. And all of a sudden, John Gruden's great. Well, it turns out maybe John Gruden's not as great as everybody thinks.
Yeah, and maybe Tony Dungy is better than everybody thought he was. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
Hey, so you didn't – the interesting thing is, I was looking more in depth about your career. You really didn't start all that young. I mean, you know, you started at 5.
Yeah, well, yeah. Believe me, there's some people that would say that's old in racing, you know. But I really bounced around a lot. Like, this was not something that I dedicated myself to my entire life. It was kind of a hobby and a passion that turned into something that I was able to make a living at. It's something that I've kind of had to grind at quite a bit. I didn't come from a racing family. I was the first of my family to ever want to do anything like this. And so we had to kind of learn a lot of the things not to do, honestly, with kind of the fringes of the sport and trying to start your own team and everything else, and making, just quite frankly, a lot of really expensive mistakes. Believe me, if you want to learn how to, you guys are in the money moving business. You want to know where a lot of money's moved, go to a NASCAR garage and I can show you how to spend it very quickly. So we learned a lot of the ways not to do it. And unfortunately, yeah, that reflected on my career too. I wound up driving a lot of really, really bad race cars. And this is a motorsport, right? I mean, this is a motorsport. Eventually that car you're driving, it's got a limit to it. And it doesn't matter how good I am or whoever's driving it is, you know, that car can only do what it can do. And I kind of found myself trapped in that a lot in my career, where I was driving for really small teams and teams that were kind of hanging on by a thread. But I also look back at that and say, wow, what a blessing that was to me, because I was able to learn so much as a driver. And I've always taken the approach of like, I don't care what car I'm getting into. Like, my job is to just go in here and do the best it can possibly do, and maybe even overperform a little bit. And so that's kind of how I've built my career. I think I've gained a lot of respect in the garage from that way, from other owners, where they say, you know, Tommy Joe is a guy, even if we're kind of a mid-pack team, we think he can kind of elevate us a step further than maybe we even should be. And so with Martin's Motorsports, with now my family's team that we've been able to put together, we look at ourselves like we're a 15th to 20th place team. But at the same time, I go, you know what, if we can bump into that top 10, that's that next little step for us. And I think that shows everybody in the garage you're able to overachieve as a driver and as a team.
Well, I was looking at the weather out there, big guy, And I know that Charlotte's expecting, or maybe you're even having right now, some rain and or thunder. I don't know.
Yeah.
But tonight it's supposed to clear up a little bit, not be raining and thunderstorms, and that'd be nice.
Yeah.
To not have to deal with that.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
so that'll take the temperature down a little bit. But how warm is it going to be in those cars? I mean, you guys are in that suit. You've got the big helmet on and everything. And as we've told folks, even though I'm sure you've got some breeze coming through the cockpit, you don't have air conditioning in those things. You guys are losing a lot of weight, a lot of water weight when you're out there on the track.
Absolutely. Every week. I can tell you the fact that this is a night race and it's going to be cool. That's nice. I'm looking forward to that. That's good. Also, as far as it affects the handling of the cars, we're going to be faster at night. There's just more grip when the track's a little bit cooler. But from inside the cockpit, John, it's pretty hot no matter what we're going to do to it. Now, there are days where we've raced in Chicago and it's a 96-degree day, and it is just that. I can tell you personally, it was a race last year, and that's the hottest I've literally ever been in a car. It was in Chicago, Illinois. We had a summer race. It was like June or July or whenever it was, and the interior cockpit temperature was 147 degrees. So
Oh my God!
And you're wearing a fire suit, and you're in a helmet with same thing, fireproof material on, and I was ready to get out of the car at the end of that day. That was tough, but everybody was. It wasn't just me. It gets to a point where it doesn't matter how well you're prepared. It doesn't matter how, in shape you are. It's a brutal environment at times. And it's just about really, I think, more mental preparation than anything else, and being able to stay focused in an incredibly tough environment. Tonight will be a little easier. Tonight will be a little nicer. It'll probably only be about 110, 120 in there tonight. So that'll be a nice, cool night.
110, 120.
Yeah, it won't be too bad.
Well, now, as far as the discipline that it takes, obviously, you guys, it's all about the discipline, not just of you, the driver, Tommy, but obviously your team, the pit crew. I imagine that much like, Pete mentioned Eli Manning, much like he has to take care of his offensive linemen and so forth, you guys are truly a team. I mean, that pit crew, the pit chief, you guys in that, when those guys, because one little mistake can put you a couple cars back or can get you ahead of the car that's pitted right behind you and get you back out onto the track. So huge difference in just fractions of a second for all these things. How much, when you focus in on that discipline and from that camaraderie or loyalty or whatever, how much does that really shape the outcome of the race?
I think you got to have guys that are competitive people just by nature. I think that's the biggest part of this. In any sport, I think the biggest thing that anybody's got to have is just an absolute drive to be great. Like if you don't have that, it's hard to kind of go anywhere else with it. You gotta be kind of self-motivated. You gotta be really hard on yourself. I've been that my whole career, and I have a pit crew right now that is, I could tell you guys, the best crew that I've ever had. They are fantastic, and they are all incredibly hard on themselves, almost to a point that it's a little tough. And to what you're saying there, John, it changes our race completely. Like, we have 5 lug nuts on each wheel, right? So a tire changer, they've got to hit those lug nuts in under a second, on and off, and be not just accurate with it, but also like secure enough, because if they were to, let's just say they hit one, but they didn't get it all the way on the stud, well, that thing eventually is going to start backing off, and that can create a wheel that, for me, inside the car is going to feel loose and like it's jerking the car all over the place. And we would have to pit again to fix that and potentially lose laps and kind of ruin our entire race. And you're talking about the difference of like a quarter of an inch of just putting the nut on the wheel a little more, and that's in one stop, and it ruins your whole race. So that's their margin of error. So for them they have to be incredibly disciplined and incredibly hard on themselves. And like example of this, last week at Darlington, we had Skyview Partners on the car at Darlington, and we were really excited about it. It was our first race back with NASCAR coming back, and we wound up having a little bit of a motor issue. We had a spark plug. This is, by the way, this is our margins. We had a spark plug that if I showed it to anybody in the world, they'd have been like, okay, well, that spark plug looks great. It was like loose. It might have moved 1/8 of an inch too much, and now all of a sudden we had a cylinder that wouldn't fire. And now you're just down 100 horsepower, and that's that. But our pick, so we were, unfortunately, we were kind of stuck. We were just not going to have the race we wanted to have. But the pit crew, one time, as our car is coming into the pit stall, NASCAR allows the crews to kind of jump over the wall to anticipate the car coming in and stop, right? So they're able to get around to the other side of the car to time it. Well, we had a penalty where they jumped over the wall just a little bit early. Like they just, and that's a penalty that puts you at the end of the line, okay? It's just a penalty where instead of starting whatever place you came off pit road, you have to drop to the back. Really, did that affect our race very much? No, we were already kind of having a bad race. I see the pit crew after the race, and they actually had a really good race. Their pit stops time-wise, we were in the 15-second range the entire time. So 15 seconds, 4 tires, fuel, adjustment to the car, 15 seconds from when the car stops to leaves. And that's really pretty good. That's really good. And the first thing the guy said to me that kind of runs our pit crew came over to me and he goes, man, I can't believe we got that penalty. I'm really sorry. That's the first thing he says. Had no effect on our race really at all. But that's what those guys thought about from that moment. The entire time they were beating themselves up. Like, oh my gosh, we blew it. It's like, honestly, we kind of blew it. You guys were fine. But that's what I think it takes. It takes people that are just really competitive and sit there and go, how can I get better for the next race? How can I make the team better? How can I make myself better? And we've got a group of guys now that are all in, and that makes it easy for me.
I just had another quick question because you went there when you said, tires, fuel, adjustments to the car, because they can legally, within the rules of NASCAR, make some adjustments during the race to some of those foils and things like that to hold you on the track or to not push it down as much. Could you tell us all about what that is, what those adjustments are?
Yeah, and without getting too crazy technical here, essentially my job as the driver not only is to try to go as fast as I can, but also provide really detailed information about what the car is doing. So like at any point during the race, I can tell them like, okay, as we enter the turn, the car is loose, which would mean like it's wanting to slide out from under me, or the car is tight, where I'm trying to turn, but it just doesn't turn the way that I want it to. It's kind of pushing out. Mm-hmm. So now I tell that information to the crew chief and I say, okay, yeah, as we go through turn 1 and 2, the car's tight, right? The car's wanting to push up. And he goes, okay, well now when we come in for this pit stop, I'm going to make an adjustment. And we have different things we can do. There's a lot of ways to kind of skin a cat here. He can do that in a lot of different ways. So the catch for the crew chief is, what's the most effective adjustment I can make to the car that it's going to respond the best to? Because if I say the car's tight, there's 15 things he could do. So which of those is the right decision? And it could be like literally as small as, okay, we're going to put 1/2 pound of air pressure in the right front tire more than we did last time. It could be something that small. And I go, car is amazing. All of a sudden the car is perfect. Or it could be an adjustment where there's a bar in the back of the car. We call it a track bar. And essentially you can raise and lower that track bar. The lower it is, the harder it is for the car to rotate. The higher it is, the easier it is for the car to rotate. So he can adjust that on both sides, up or down. That's done by a pit crew member as they hop over the wall. They change the tire. They reach up with a wrench and they do that while the pit crew is changing the rest of the tires and stuff. So there's big adjustments like that. There's really small ones where it could be like a 1/16 of an inch of a shim that goes into like a shock to get the car off the ground that much more. And all of a sudden that changes the aerodynamics. So, I mean, there's 15 things they can do. And that's why I like being a driver because I don't have to make these decisions. I just go, look, this is what it's doing. You tell me what you want to do to it.
Well, that speaks to the idea that you guys really are a team. You know, people look at it, they see a race car driver, right? And they see the driver and they're like, well, he's got the pit crew. It's a team. You guys are all part of the same team. You talked about discipline. You talked about competitive side of things too. And that's really what it's all about, because you can't really sit there and it's just like in our world. You can't sit and love what you just did because you did something great. You got to look to the next one. And then you also look more at what are some of the mistakes that we are making. But Tommy Joe, I'm curious. I'm going to talk about a competitor now. And I'm just curious your thoughts of, is this all because of the football background and the discipline and the team effort and everything else? So why is it that Joe Gibbs Racing is so successful? Is it a lot of that past background in sports and football and all the rest of that, or what? What do you think?
I think it's also the length of time that they've been doing it too, Pete. Like, I'm sure if you talk to Joe when they first came into the sport in 1994, like they had some sponsors lined up. They came into the sport, and it's not like they won right away. They did not. It took a long time to build up that program to what it is now, which is now a powerhouse in NASCAR. And so it was a lot of, number one, sponsorship, right? I mean, you got to be able to raise the money in our sport, and that's not discrediting anything they're doing. And it's people and time. So money, people, time. And it's like you get the right people, you have the right funding, and you're able to build this slowly over time and create relationships with manufacturers. And that's one of the big things in our sport. We're an independent team. We don't have that direct relationship with like a Toyota, Chevrolet, Ford. We have kind of a secondary relationship. And I'm thankful that we're partnered with Chevrolet, who has been great to us. But of course, we're not the flagship Chevrolet team. Whereas Joe Gibbs, in their respect, they are the flagship Toyota team. So they're doing wind tunnel testing. They're doing like development of the new engines, new parts. They're doing all that in-house with that. And look, it took a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of great people to get them to the position where they're in right now. And so that's it. I look at Martin's Motorsports and I go, okay, look, we've done this now a few times, really we think the wrong way, or at least we've learned. And I say that because it sounds like I'm discrediting our past efforts. We tried our hardest to do this. We kind of were fighting uphill. Really, we didn't have the funding to do it. We were trying to do it in a smaller way than we're able to do it now. I think for the first time now, we've really been able to put ourselves in a position where, okay, I know we can do this the right way this time. And we've been able to kind of empower our people that way. And so I look forward and I go, okay, yeah, I might get frustrated when we finish 26th in a race because I think we should have finished 15th. That's going to happen. Those little setbacks are going to happen. I got to try to separate that a little bit as the driver and also the person that's managing the race team and go, this is a climb over, talk to me in 5 years. Like, where are we in 5 years? Are we competing for wins week in, week out as Martin's Motorsports? That's not unrealistic. It's not unrealistic when you think that far down the road if we're able to build this in successfully the right way. Yeah, and I think that drive, and I think Joe Gibbs, when I've heard him speak about it, Pete, he said it's people. Like, that's what it taught him in football, was he had to have the right people, not only as players, but also assistant coaches, the staff that he put together, everything together. It's a lot of things working together, right? It's not just the head coach, not just the quarterback. It's so many other things that go into it. Scouting department, like drafting the right guys. Like, it's like a process. You know, when he shows up to the Redskins, they don't win a first year. It's like, okay, we got to turn this thing around. We got to get the right people in here. And so that's how I'm looking at it with Martin's Motorsports.
Go ahead, John.
On I know that a sport like golf that people never really thought of, Tommy Joe, as a sport where, you know, guys are out there jacking up weight. They never really thought about that until Tiger really, not only because of his outrageous power, but, you know, the guy's a physical beast as well.
Yeah.
And then it kind of became clear that a lot of the guys on the PGA would, you know, be in those big semis where it's basically a gym on wheels, and they'd be in there working out. Not the Arnold kind of workout, but they're doing a lot of strength and conditioning that they need to be able to do what they do. And I bet the same's true for you guys. They probably don't focus as much on you guys getting in there, and I'm sure that an awful lot of it is cardio, because, you know, it's going to take a lot of that, because Otherwise, your arms are going to lock up.
Yeah.
Like you said, 4 turns every lap for 200 laps where you're fighting multiple G's when you're doing it. There's a lot of stress on your forearms, probably even shoulders and things like that, wrists. I can't imagine all the different things. You guys have a specific set of workouts that you do when you're in training to get ready to get in the car?
I think that's something that I've focused on. Yeah, absolutely. And it is mostly cardio that I'm doing. I'm mixing a little bit of strength training as well, but for the most part, it's just endurance. And I think that's more of the mental hurdle more than anything else. I think that's like when you lose focus, when you get tired, you're going to lose focus, right? And when you lose focus in a race car that's doing 190 miles an hour, that's when you got potential to get hurt and hurt yourself and hurt somebody else and hurt the race team as well. And, you know, so for me, that's it. It's like being able to stay focused in an environment that's making you very tired physically. And so being able to stay mentally there the entire race and like feel just as fresh on lap 200 as you did when you climbed in the car on lap 1. And trust me, that's not a fight that I win every single time, even trying my best to stay on top of it. I mean, there's days where it's just a brutal environment, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Like, we're not, as human beings, we're really not meant to be in a 140-degree environment for 2.5 hours. Like, that's just not really where we're supposed to be. But I think conditioning and staying on top of that physically and being ready for it, that can help you a ton. And Darlington last week, one of the most physically demanding tracks that we go to. It's a really worn out track where the car really never handles the way you want it to. It's sliding around a lot. You're having to make big adjustments, correcting it. It's just very, very physically and mentally demanding track. And this layoff that we had for a couple of months, I'm blessed that I was able to kind of stay in pretty good shape and be ready for it. And honestly, I got out of the car and I felt great. I mean, I felt really, really, I was actually imagining I was going to feel a lot worse the first one back, and I felt pretty fresh. And maybe that's part of the reason why I'm so jacked up for this race tonight. I was like, man, I wish we were running that race the next day. Like, I was ready to go.
Tommy Joe, I got one for you. So, and I'm looking at the clock too. So I'm very conscious of your time frame. So I'll ask a question. John will ask a question. We don't need to take up your whole day.
No, y'all are fine, man.
So
I'm here for y'all.
Here's a question for you. So 4 football games, and as the week goes on, you change the diet, you know, continually as you get closer and closer. Game day, you definitely eat a little bit different. Is that similar to what you guys are doing in terms of being ready for the track? And, you know, I know the salt tabs and everything else, and everybody talks about this, that, and the other, but what is the food structure? What are you guys looking for that you think is the most healthy way to approach sitting in there at 140 degrees and all the rest of it?
Yeah. For me, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm the cleanest eater of all time. I grew up in the South, and your guy here likes some barbecue and some fried chicken. And,
You're a good man.
like, okay, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm perfect. But the one thing that I try to do in the couple of days beforehand is mix in clean meals, number one, vegetables, fruit, like kind of like grilled chicken, some kind of meals like that. Usually the day before a race, I'm going to eat almost like I think about it like preparing for a marathon. Like, I'm going to do kind of a carb load kind of thing the day before, where I'm going to eat big dinner, pasta, whatever it is. I'm going to wake up in the morning. I'm going to eat a big, healthy breakfast, really overdo it probably, because me personally, I don't like eating right before a race. Like, I know some guys, I've literally seen them be like, the race is in 45 minutes and they're like eating some macaroni. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how you're doing this. Like, I don't know how you're doing it. So props to them. But I generally will eat like big first thing in the morning, and then I'm done for the day until like after the race is over. And then Pedialyte, like, I found out that that's just something that it works really well for me to avoid cramps. Like, I've had cramps before in a race car, and that's literally the most miserable that I have ever been, like, heat included. Like, I've been really hot and miserable to the point that it's burned the bottoms of my legs and up my back, like literal burns. And that still wasn't as miserable as cramping up. When you're cramping up for 30 or 40 minutes and you got to keep driving a race car, that's That's tough. So I really stay on top of the hydration thing. And that starts the week before. It doesn't start the day before. It starts Monday. Fluid intake, fluid intake, fluid intake. Okay, now we get to a couple of days before. I bump that up a little bit. And the day of, it's outside of that big breakfast, I'm basically on a liquid diet until we go green.
I know, Tommy Joe, that if Pete was down there in Charlotte with you, you guys would have been hitting the Waffle House this morning because
that's me.
And so would I.
You're talking to the guy.
Yeah,
I love Waffle House
because that is the best breakfast in America.
You're talking to the #1 fan. That was literally the pre-race meal at Darlington last week. I went to a Waffle House with a mask on. I was ready. I was like, I'm not breaking my routine here.
Pete, you know the owners too, right?
Yeah, I'm good. Luckily, I'm fortunate enough to have met the owners, and Joe and Walt, who's the CEO, are great guys. They actually just had that meeting the other day with Vice President Pence down there, and that was pretty interesting. But he is so excited, I can't tell you. He's as excited as you are, Tommy Joe, right now, because they're actually opening Waffle Houses in multiple states, and they're excited to get back and going and making money because they were not, they were open for takeout like everybody else, but as we all know, a lot of these places, they're open, but they're not making money. They're actually doing it out of the kindness of their hearts, quite frankly, because all of them are losing money until now. They're going to start making money again because they're opened up. But yeah, I'd be eyeing up a pecan waffle with a peanut butter waffle with a chocolate chip waffle on top of that, a side, some scrambles, and oh boy, I'm ready for some waffles.
I'm not going to act like the breakfast that I have on race day is always the healthiest thing of all time. It's going to be some version of a French toast waffle, something like that, bacon, eggs, hash browns. Like just bring it. Like I look at that almost like a cheat day. Like, well, I'm going to burn about 1,500 calories later tonight anyway, so it's not really going to matter. Like, let me just pile it on.
What's your favorite celebration dinner afterwards? Because like you said, you've had a big breakfast, even if it's a normal race day instead of an evening race. You're all liquids up until the race, really, so you got to be hungry when you get out of that car. What's your favorite?
This depends when the race is over, honestly, John. Like tonight, we're going to finish this race at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So I'm going to be going to whatever. I'm going to be going to Steak and Shake or something on the way out. Like it's not, my options are going to be a little limited here. But normally we would go out for like a steak dinner or something like that. It also depends on who we got in town. Like a big part of this, and one, like I am so grateful for you guys kind of taking this chance on me and our team. The one thing that I desperately wish is that you guys could be here to kind of enjoy this together with us, because that's part of the camaraderie of this. Like in other sports, a sponsor is like, you're whatever, you guys are putting your name down there on the field. I'm not saying you're not getting anything out of it, but on a race team, you're literally part of the team. Like you're in this with us. You're literally on the car. And being able to kind of debrief with the sponsors and hang out and people that you guys may have brought to the track as guests or whatever, and kind of being able to engage with you. That's a big part of what we normally do after the race. So it's to answer the question here, John, where would you like to eat? Because that's where I'm going. Wherever y'all want to go, I'm down. I'm pretty flexible. You're like, oh, I'm big hibachi guy. Let's go. Like I'm all about it. Let's hit it up.
I'm thinking Texas Roadhouse, John. Or
Texas Roadhouse. Let's go.
Nothing wrong with Texas Roadhouse.
My crew would love you.
Well,
they would love it.
But also, if there happens to be barbecue, and if it's the South, there would be, Pete.
Yeah.
You can always get a nice steak at a barbecue joint. But and I might do the same, because Pete and I don't always just eat ribs when we go to barbecue joints. Sometimes that pork chop or that steak is the best thing on the menu.
John, I saw you grilling the steaks on Instagram
last night.
The other day with the bottle of wine, everything like that.
Yeah.
We're just coming over to your place after we race. Is all we're
Next
doing.
time you're racing up in Chicago, we'll do that.
Absolutely. I'm in. You don't have to sell me on it.
Well, Tommy Joe, we really can't thank you enough, can we, Pete?
No,
for giving us some time today.
And I'll tell you what, I want to thank the guys from Skyview Partners who introduced us. I mean, They're great people. Scott over there, who runs the whole show, is he's become a really good friend. He was
great guy.
last year, just so you know, Tommy Joe, I barely knew the guy. He showed up at a swimming pool in Reno when I was there. My daughter was in the Miss USA competition.
It sounds like Scott. All right,
Yeah.
off the bat, we're already there. I'm there with you.
The Miss USA, and he's patrolling the pool. But anyway,
Yeah, sounds like Scott. I love you,
I don't wanna
Scott. If you're
throw him
watching
under the-
this, I love you, my friend. But yeah, it sounds like Scott. Very on brand.
but he was so great and so generous. I meet him in May, and by September he's buying a table for the Twin Cities Lyme Foundation that I'm so dear. My wife started a couple of years ago, and we're raising people's awareness of that whole Lyme disease. And this is Lyme Disease Awareness Month, as a matter of fact. But it's
Awesome.
It's funny because all of a sudden he reaches out to me and he goes, "Hey, you ought to think about this idea." He goes, "We're sponsoring this guy." I said, "Hey man, say no more. You already got me." So that's where the wheel started, and we were excited, and we're super excited for tonight.
I just can't tell you guys thank you enough. It really does mean so much to our team. You know, not just monetarily, but also what you guys are able to do for us and kind of increase the exposure for our team as well, and potentially introduce me to all the great fans of Market Rebellion and you two guys. Like I'm just really blessed to be able to kind of represent your brand and you guys in a new market and a kind of a new adventure for you guys. And I hope you really feel like you're getting a lot out of it, and primarily having a lot of fun with it. I can be a really competitive guy. Like, I don't know if you want to talk to me 5 minutes after the race. If it wasn't a good race, I'm probably not the best interview at that point. Then again, they say, what do they say? They say, like, any exposure is good exposure.
Right.
Right. So I might be able to give you a pretty good quote 5 minutes afterwards. But it really means a lot to have a new company on a car, and really a cool company, because I can tell you guys from personal experience, and I was sharing this a little bit with my family as well. This is neat because I would consider myself a very amateur investor. And that has really happened over the last few years of my life, where I have really started to look at, like, okay, I need to start really looking at the market and making this something that's just a habit. Like, it needs to be something that I'm doing month to month, week to week, paycheck to paycheck, where I'm going, okay, look, I should be saving. I should be looking a little more long-term for myself and kind of financial security. And then all this happens, where now we have Skyview and you guys now as a partner for our race team. And I've learned, like, I've looked at a lot of you guys' videos now, and in a week, I feel like I've already learned a lot more than probably where I was at. So to be able to maybe share that to some other people in the NASCAR world that are looking at this, and not looking at it like I'm about to get rich off the stock market, but just looking at it from the sense of, and you guys have spoken about it, just trying to be disciplined and thinking a little more long-term, and like with options that you guys are so good at. You're talking about, I didn't even know what the hell an option was. Okay? This is my level with this. My level was like buy and sell a stock. And now it's like kind of expanding my vision of what this actually could be. And I just want to thank you guys for that, and all the knowledge you guys are kind of putting out there to the world.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. And we wish you a lot of luck tonight, of course, Tommy Joe. More than anything, we want you to be safe. We want the crew to be safe. We are delighted to be part of this with you, and we're looking forward to you popping some champagne corks soon.
Absolutely. I want you guys to be there when
and
we do.
some milk too, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Look, pour it all. I can tell you, you're not going to talk to a happier person in America if we come out of this race with a good finish tonight. I can tell you that.
Well, we're rooting for you, man.
Thank you.
Thumbs
guys.
up.
Joe, appreciate
Thank you
man.
guys again. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Anytime.
Take care.
Thank you.